Hi, I'm Katie Crane, and this is the Pilates Lounge. Welcome to Season 4, my friends, of the Pilates Lounge Podcast. This is a space for movement lovers, Pilates educators, and Pilates professionals who want to think a little bit deeper about the work we do. My name's Katie Crane. I've been teaching Pilates for over 20 years, and along the way, I've worn many hats. Studio owner, teacher trainer, mentor, and lifelong student of the work we do. I'm also a surfer, an adventurer, a mum, a busy wife, and someone who believes that movement is by far more than exercise. On this podcast, we talk about Pilates as a practice, not just what we do on the mat or on the equipment, but how Pilates shapes the way we move, teach, lead, and live our lives. We explore anatomy, health, business, culture, and the evolving identity of Pilates in the modern world. This is a place for honest conversations, lived experience, and perspectives that respect both the lineage of Pilates and the people practicing it today. So thank you so much for being here. Let's dive into the episode. Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of the Pilates Lounge. Today I've got with us the lovely Lauren Skopal. Lauren, I'm going to literally hand over the microphone to you so you can do the introduction because you know you better than anybody. So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, and I really want to know what it is that you're passionate about right now.
Hi, Katie. Thanks for having me. So I'm Lauren Skopal. I'm an exercise and sports scientist and founder of Limba Sports Performance. So I've been involved in the sport and movement industry for over 30 years through different roles as an athlete, international performer, coach, consultant, and educator. And I'm really passionate about improving movement. And I think I have quite a unique perspective of that from my background in gymnastics, but that's also evolved over time to incorporate lots of new disciplines like Pilates as well. So I think we never stop learning about movement and about the body. And I love to really integrate all the different perspectives that I've had when I'm teaching and doing movement myself.
Cool. So what brought you to Pilates in the first place?
So I think in my last year of gymnastics, Pilates was starting to become more common, not in the way that it is today, but clinical Pilates was starting to become more common, and the physio gave us a few Pilates exercises in the last year of gymnastics, but it wasn't a big focus. And then I was used to training 6 days a week. So after retiring from gymnastics, I was looking for other forms of training that I could be involved in. And I started Pilates and fell in love with it straight away because it had such structure and attention to detail, which is quite similar to gymnastics in that way. And that's how I sort of got into Pilates. And then after I finished my initial study at Deakin University, I did a Stop Pilates teaching qualification then.
Yeah, okay. So you were a professional gymnast, hey?
Yeah, I guess that's what you call it. So I did rhythmic gymnastics in Australia for 12 years, so sort of training and competing in national championships and that sort of thing. Obviously, it's an early specialization sport, so you tend to finish up gymnastics still quite young. And I wasn't expecting this, but I fell into performing after that. So I started performing as an acrobat and creating unique acts combining gymnastics and acrobatics, dance, choreography. And I ended up performing around the world for another 15 odd years after that. So it's something I didn't intend to go into, but it was just a bit of a natural progression after gymnastics.
Yeah, okay. And so what does that type of schedule look like for your body?
Yeah, it can be really different. So gymnastics, typically, if you're training at a high level, you're training at least 6 days a week, either once or twice a day, depending on the program. So that's quite intense. As an acrobat, you can craft your own schedule to a degree, which is good. So I like to do either dance training or Pilates training in the morning to prime my body. And then I'd often do circus specific training in the afternoon. But it just depends if you're preparing for a performance contract at the time or if you're doing more maintenance and cross training.
Yeah, okay. So explain what circus specific practice might look like.
So depending on what your specialty discipline is, which can be quite vast. So I did a combination of aerial shows, so aerial hoop or aerial hammock, adagio, so that's where you work with a partner. So I worked with my fiance or my partner, and we would do acts together. So where the man lifts off the woman, and you do body balance trick and acrobatic tricks and choreography. And also I did hula hoops as well. So depending what contract we were preparing for, you'd be training some of those disciplines.
Right. I imagine that you have to really get to know your body very well to trust your body to be doing these kind of dynamic things, right? Can you talk us through that? Like, what is it like to really know your body?
I think that's where gymnastics is really useful, because you learn it from such a young age and you keep developing that over time that it becomes quite natural and you just get this inherent body awareness. I think it's very difficult learning acrobatics as an adult if you haven't had that base of a similar training. So whether it's dance or gymnastics. I've done some coaching at the National Institute of Circus Arts, and it's sort of really clear in that context because we have limited time to develop the artists. They do a 3-year degree. We don't really have time to be teaching the basics of how to control the body, remembering to stretch the legs, point the toes, present the skills, position your posture. Those things, ideally, they really need to have developed those in their youth. And then we're just layering on teaching the circus specialties after that.
Mm-hmm. Mm. So is that quite a common transition then? Like, you're exposed to gymnastics, which a lot of young children start in gymnastics. And is that what you see? Like you say, that they become the best performers, have the highest success rate because they understand their body well. What needs to happen then, do you think? What's actually happening when you're young and you're doing gymnastics to then really succeed in something like acrobatics or circus? Or what comes to mind is Cirque du Soleil. What is that
Lots
journey?
of those top artists do come from gymnastics because, like you say, it is a bit of a natural progression, but not every gymnast is a great performer on stage. So I guess there's those two elements. There's the physical element, but then there's also the ability to connect with your audience and express in a more artistic way. So it's finding those gymnasts and those acrobats who have both those qualities, and they're the ones that tend to thrive in that performing arts environment. In terms of physical development, I think everyone kind of acknowledges like kinder gym is so important for young kids, but I think it's often forgotten that, you can continue to develop and benefit from gymnastic-based training throughout your youth and beyond, not just in those early years. It's because I think it's the attention to detail, and this is where there's some similarities, I think, with Pilates. With the Pilates choreography, if you want to, you can really hone into that attention to detail, making sure your posture's correct, making sure the movement flows smoothly, adding more complexity to the choreography, layering in the breathing. And in gymnastics, you need to be aware of what your whole body is doing all the time, because you need to complete the movement, but it needs to look easy and it needs to look effortless, and you need to be able to present it. So I think because of all those facets of gymnastics, that's where the body awareness develops.
Yeah, sure. And we see that in Pilates, don't we? Like when somebody really understands the work in their own body. I remember I had an educator that I worked with, and she would constantly say, I want you to make that look effortless. But in my body, I'm thinking, but it's not effortless. It's really, really hard to get to that point, isn't it?
Yeah, but sometimes actually just the thought of how can you make this look easy. I'm thinking, because I went to ballet this morning even, and ballet is very like that as well. there's always something you can tweak and improve more in ballet class, but sometimes what you really just need to do, and what the teacher will say is, actually you can do this. You just need to pull up, you need to feel confident, and just having that feeling changes your posture, lifts your core, and makes the movement look more effortless.
Yeah, it is true. I agree too. As somebody who has developed yourself through gymnastics and then acro, and obviously done some really dynamic movement choices, do you see or do you recognize, are there some common pain points that you would see in your type of body work?
Yeah, I think so. I've worked a lot with, artistic athletes and gymnasts, dancers, figure skaters, calisthenics, circus artists, because there is that high demand for flexibility. Joint stability is even more important. And the longer you do it, the more you stress your body, that starts to surface. So I think things like cartilage damage in the hips are quite common, and that can be managed in some cases with really good joint stability. Really strong glutes, strong core, strong adductors can help to mitigate those issues. Sometimes they do need surgery over time, often in retirement. Sometimes it's unavoidable, but sometimes it can be quite manageable with things like Pilates, and just being consistent with that. Spine injuries, I guess, if you stress your back a lot in disciplines like contortion or even rhythmic gymnastics. Some young athletes might develop stress fractures, although we know that they can heal if they're managed properly. Not indifferent to tennis players, though. Tennis players, we also see a lot of stress fractures in young players from the serving loads. So it's a bit of a balance between managing training load, understanding which joints are being stressed, and how we can support that with muscle development.
Mm-hmm. And I haven't worked with gymnasts much at all, only some young kids actually. And from my perspective, what I was seeing was that there was this real push to get these kids to bend into positions and movements without any teaching of long-term joint health. Like, kids are bendy, right? It's easy to get them to do things without ever considering what that might actually be doing to the body. And that's my view of somebody who knows nothing about gymnastics. So please don't anybody come to me and be like, that's not true. But do you think that now what you know with Pilates, does that play a role in educating better and having a better understanding of long-term, like you say, stability, or looking after joints so that there is longevity?
Yeah, I think Pilates can be a really useful tool. You can use Pilates, for example, in the cool down of your training sessions, not just for gymnasts, but other athletes as well. I think, lots of athletes can have repetitive loadings or back pain, and things like teaching, spinal articulations and just the basics, spine curls, rollovers, gentle spine twists. Those sort of things can be really great tools that athletes can use in their cool downs, and can help with that body awareness. In terms of bending in half, I do see it a lot, not necessarily just in gymnastics, but I've done workshops with different groups, calisthenics, dance, and they all want to achieve tricks, but they don't always know how to warm up properly. And I think that's really important to teach youth, because even though they can get away with it now, you want them to develop those healthy habits of looking after their body, doing a proper warm-up, which is progressive in the way that they're developing their range of motion. That one exercise progresses to the next exercise. And then finally, they do their hardest skills when the body is most warm and most prepared. And then you balance that with your strength work as well. I actually think gymnasts overall are not too bad because we do have such comprehensive warm-up routines. So I think that is helpful, but obviously it depends on the program. But I think educating youth about the importance of a proper warm-up and cool down is really important. And there's great opportunities to slip little injury prevention and Pilates style exercises into the athlete's existing training.
And I guess because I know that you've also worked with tennis as well, I guess you would probably see that all athletic pursuits are very repetitive in their nature, aren't they? Regardless.
Yeah, there's always some aspect of that in elite sport, and it really depends on the sport. But you can even look at running sports in AFL. Many AFL players will get a sore back just from the repetitive running loads. So you need to look at their lumbopelvic stability and what they're actually doing when they're doing hip extension and how they're holding their pelvis, how they're engaging their core. Tennis, it's obviously the overhead sport, so looking after the shoulder but looking after the spine because of the load with the serve. Every sport has its unique little things, but I think good Pilates teachers, they're really tuned into looking at how the body moves. So I think there's great opportunity to incorporate Pilates into sport training. But you've got to, involve the Pilates practitioner in the program, let them watch the training sessions, let them see how the athletes are moving, and then they'll be able to take that, bring them into the studio and help them link some of those principles together.
And do you, when you're working with an athlete who's doing whatever sport, one particular sport, do you lean into a lot of cross-training patterns? So are you teaching their body or helping with stability and mobility by doing different movements than what they're doing a lot? Or do you lean more into, okay, well, let's improve the movement that you're having to do in a repetitive nature? Is there one more than one or the other?
I think it's got to be a bit of both. Usually they come to you for a particular reason. So whether it's a previous injury, whether it's a lack of flexibility or mobility, usually there's some sort of reason bringing them to you if it's in private practice, I suppose. So first you've got to look at, okay, what are you trying to solve? But then you'll usually bring different perspectives in. So I think it's a combination of, they'll come in for a particular reason. You kind of ask all the questions to get as much information as you can. You start to watch them move and you start to put pieces of the puzzle together. Like, I think this might be happening because, well, I've actually noticed this is what is happening when you attempt a core exercise, or this is what's happening when you're balancing on one leg. This is what's happening when you're extending the hip. That might be causing this other issue when you're completing these movements. So let's try and work on that. And then let's try and do a movement that's quite specific to the one that you have to perform. So I think it's a combination of doing the basics, making sure the muscle activation patterns are firing in an ideal way, getting your strength from the core out, and then get the athlete up on their feet, try to get them to replicate a similar movement, and then challenging them by adding some sort of resistance or instability to that movement pattern and see if they can maintain their technique.
Do you think that in the world of athletics and professional sport or even just high level performance sport and stuff, do you think that people are more open to using Pilates, in your experience, as a preventative or as part of their training, or do you mostly see people when they're injured?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think most people realize that it's beneficial, but I guess people are always time poor. Athletes are very time poor. So it's where to fit it in the training schedule, and it's depends if you're talking from a whole program perspective, are the coaches going to make room for Pilates in the schedule somewhere? It's a great cross-training tool because athletes need variety, both from a physical standpoint, but also just to maintain motivation and engagement. So if you can do a cross-training session once a week, I think it's really valuable. But if you can't, there's still plenty of ways to input Pilates into what they're already doing. As I said, warm-ups, cool downs, grab some Pilates repertoire and include it in their accessory work in their strength and conditioning program. Because you see the same old exercises done, in the core part of the strength and conditioning program often, like dead bugs done not very well, pile of press. And it's not that they're great exercises, but yeah, athletes need variety. Sport is so varied in the stimulus and the challenges they're presented with in sport. So we want to replicate that with their physical training. So yeah, long story short, I think most people realize it's beneficial, but perhaps they're just not sure about how to best incorporate it into the training schedule.
Well, I guess it's like, I feel like the whole Pilates industry, nobody tends to come to us really as a preventative because of this problem, right? Everyone's time poor, everyone's super busy, everybody knows that it's good for them, but then we tend to see people once they've got these injuries, these complex conditions, and it takes them so much longer to recover than if we could just insert Pilates into what it is that you're doing. So with that in mind, what are some strategies, like you've said, that say the coach can initiate the foundational moves, dead bugs, all the things, and agreed, we see it being done very poorly. What do we do from an industry standpoint? What can we be doing as Pilates educators to help facilitate that journey of Pilates being inserted into professional sports? Big question for you.
Tricky question. I think many more physios are becoming educated in Pilates, and I think they are helping to get it more accepted and more integrated into the sporting environment. But yeah, it's tricky. It's really tricky. But I think even just doing what we're doing today is really helpful because, as I said, you don't know who's going to listen to this conversation, and it's just a coach might have been thinking about it in the back of their head, and maybe something that we're going to discuss today might trigger a thought. You know what? I can't do it all year round, but next pre-season, I'm going to source out a Pilates professional and we're going to add it in the cross training once a week. Or let's do a workshop at the start of the year and let's, do some training with athletes about how they can better engage their core and that sort of thing. So I think the program has to work out what is going to work for them, but there's just so many ways, as I said. So I think it's just keeping the education out there. I've been trying to make little resources lately, like little PDFs, just short things that athletes and coaches can use with a few exercises, a few videos, putting things into little themes, whether it's foam roller, different types of core activation, balance challenges. So I think it's just keeping the information flowing out there. And because even us as Pilates instructors, we can get stuck in the pattern of doing the same things or giving the same exercises as well. So I think it's really important to keep things fresh, and hopefully by keeping the information out there, we can help with that a little bit. I'm not sure what the answer is.
Yeah, I know it's a hard one. Hey, because do you find when people are coming to you, is that, say, are they being referred because their coach has said, oh yeah, well, we've heard that Lauren works really well with athletes, or how do people normally find you that are sporty, professionally sport orientated?
I have a lot of clients and athletes referred from one physio that I work with, Amir Takla. Yeah, he's an amazing physio, and he really believes, I guess, in using exercise, Pilates, gymnastic mobility, and things like that. But that's just a relationship that we've established, I guess, over many, many years. So yes, it is often someone telling people you need this now to avoid further complications or running into injuries and things like that. You do get the odd athlete that's quite proactive and interested to learn more, but not everybody. Yeah, often it's from referrals. The way I have worked in different sporting organizations sort of came out of my experiences at Deakin University. So they're the top sports science uni in the world, which is really exciting. And through some of my placements, through my master's degree, I got to work at Richmond Football Club and Tennis Australia. So because I had those placement experiences, then job opportunities came out of that. It is often hard organically to get into new sports and new organizations, but you've just got to, I guess, keep promoting yourself, what you do, what you can offer, and then hopefully you find an organization that's the right fit for what you do.
Yeah, I want to ask you a little bit of a business sided question. When I look on your website, it's very clear that you specialize in athletes, and that you specialize in you've got the gymnastics, calisthenics, dance, you've got the tennis, you've got all of that on your website. There is nothing really on there that would say we see pregnant women or we see women over 40. So you've really niched down in your market, which I'm a businesswoman. I know exactly who my market is as well. How important has that been for you to actually give you a solid standing in working with these people? Hey friend, thanks so much for listening. Did you know that you can now find us on YouTube at youtube.com/The Pilates Professional? Now, if this episode resonates with you, please share it with someone else who would benefit from hearing it. Back to the show.
Yeah, I think it's important. I have had, there's times where I've had 2 websites or 2 Instagram pages. I don't know, you might have noticed or not, because obviously I work with athletes, but I also am happy to work with everyday people. That's okay too. As long as they're motivated and focused and ready to learn, I'm happy to work with anyone. But I think it is good to distinguish, I've been an athlete, I've been an international performer. So I do find it really enjoyable, but I also can relate very easily to those kind of athletes because I've been through a similar training regime myself. So I do enjoy working with really focused athletes. And so, at times I sometimes have 2 websites or 2 Instagram pages so I can tweak my messaging a little bit. And, some resources I develop for athletes. But I also really believe in exercise and movement as a really important part of a healthy lifestyle. So some of the flexibility programs that I've developed, they're also for everyday people who maybe did a bit of gymnastics or dance when they were young and love that style of movement and want to use it more as a cross-training tool to be healthy and fit. So, I think messaging is important. I love working with athletes, but I also love helping everyday people as well.
Yeah, but I think that the messaging is really important. And that's my point, that we can all work with anybody, of course, but the fact that you have ultimately had the courage to laser focus in on this tiny little niche market, a lot of people would be saying to themselves, oh no, but if I just promote my work to whatever population it is, I'm not going to have enough work. But actually the opposite is true, because you become respected, recognized, and sought out as the person who can work with those people. And then you get even better at working with those people because you work with them so often. We do the same in our studio. We do not market to anybody who is younger than 40. If you're not 40 and going through perimenopause, you will not see any of our marketing. But it's not that the guys don't come, that the pregnant girls don't come, that everybody comes, but they come because that 40-year-old perimenopausal woman starts with us and then she tells her friends. So you've done the same, that you know who you're marketing to. That's how I found you, is because I was like, oh, this girl knows who she is. She knows who she serves. Then I think in this day and age where there's like a plethora of Pilates out there and you could serve anybody, that you stand up and you're like, no, these are my people and I can help you. I'm the best person for you to come and see. So kudos to you. I think that it's a really important thing to do in Pilates.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I'd rather work with 10 really inspiring athletes than overload myself and be teaching all day and be going through the motions. So quality over quantity.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's fantastic. And so tell me, can you kind of, when I always imagined, having grown up, in sport, not to your level at all, but always being a really sporty kid, I just assumed that the person who would be the head coach, who is running the drills for these athletes, knows everything about the body, anatomy, the whole bit. But I've realized that that's not the case. Like, they might know a whole lot about that individual sport, but they're not necessarily knowing what is safe or what is going to give that person longevity. They're just looking to win the game this season, right?
Yeah, the sports coaches are in charge of the sports skills, and then usually there's a physical preparation manager who should be looking at the overall picture of their physical loading. So taking into account what they're doing on the field, taking into account gym, recovery, and overseeing the whole thing. That depends, I guess, how big the program is. But yeah, usually the sports coaches are in charge of developing their sports skills, and then there'll be a physical preparation manager and maybe additional strength and conditioning coaches looking after their body in a more, I guess, holistic way. But I've still noticed through teaching in sports science and doing various strength and conditioning courses that, yeah, there's still various things that I think are missed in terms of even teaching how to activate the core properly or teaching basic core exercises is not a big focus of these courses. Flexibility is barely touched on as something important, yet it's the basis of healthy movement. Is you need the sufficient range of motion to do the movement first. So I think from an education point of view in the exercise science industry, in the sports science, strength and conditioning, there's a lot of focus on just teaching people, okay, can you teach a squat? Can you teach a deadlift? Can you teach an overhead press? And yes, these are very foundational strength and conditioning moves, and they translate well to a lot of sport movements. So they are really important, but there's so much more that's important in how the body moves and how the body works that I think isn't given enough focus.
And do you mean like even in your own, because you've got quite a few qualifications, like exercise sports science, Master of Applied Sports Science, Bachelor BA of Exercise and Sport, and Health Science. Is it fair to say that even with all of that education, is there a point in all of that where you touched on the principles of, well, not necessarily calling them principles of Pilates, but what you've learned in Pilates, and how does that cross over, or how, in that case, if you didn't learn any of that, like, how did that change the way that you work with the body?
Yeah, a lot of what I learned from Pilates is not part of what you would learn in an exercise and sports science degree. So it was really beneficial to do the Pilates training following, I guess, my initial training in sports science, because I look at the body with so much more attention to detail, partly because of gymnastics as well, but partly because of the Pilates training. I'm much more picky with making sure that athletes and clients assume the right posture when they're doing a particular exercise. And it's something that I try to reinforce with the students I come across. Obviously, I just have maybe one class of however many classes are going through a degree, but I think people are too quick to settle when they're analyzing movement. And once someone has the general essence of the movement correct, then there's room to apply that attention to detail and really make sure they're hitting the ideal posture, really make sure they're using their core effectively, they're not going beyond their range of motion capacities and compensating in some way. So the Pilates training was really beneficial. Things like posture analysis, they'll do a basic version, I guess, in the exercise and sports science degree, which is okay. But I think it's more, learning how to teach core exercises properly, learning how to activate the core. I think they're really important for all exercise professionals to understand, even if they're not going to specialize in Pilates.
So when you did your BA and your master's, what do you come out being really solid on understanding? Like what is the, like when you walk away, is it quite generalized and then you would kind of decide, okay, now I'm going to focus on whatever and then delve deeper into that? Or what does it look like?
So I chose to study at Deakin because it was quite flexible in terms of which direction that you could take it. So obviously there's your core subjects of your anatomy, physiology, exercise delivery, biomechanics, exercise physiology, but then there's room for you to specialize in different areas. So you can do more strength and conditioning subjects if you want to go down that line. You can do more physiology, you can do more biomechanics. And I think there's more variety in the subjects now too, because there's lots of subjects on growth, development, and aging, and there's more focus on how to tailor exercise delivery for different populations. So youth athletes versus older adults versus pregnant populations and things like that. But really you touch on lots of different things and learn about the theoretical basis of the body. But a lot of things you're going to then learn on your placement or in your first few roles out working. So I think it's comprehensive, but also general. So you need to decide what you want to get out of it. If you're going through that degree, and you don't need to have the answer straight away, but you can't just think you're going to graduate from exercise and sports science and have all these job offers. So I think it is good to decide what area that you want to go into, give it a go. If you don't like it, you can always try something else. So whether that's specializing in Pilates, whether that's going on, lots of people go on to study physiotherapy now after exercise science, or they want to do the exercise physiology masters, which Pilates is integrated more in that. So that's not the course that I did, but I think Pilates is more widely accepted as being a tool in exercise physiology for more chronic conditions and injuries. I think there's a lot more room for Pilates to be seen as also a tool for high performance athletes. You don't just need to have a chronic condition or an injury to benefit from Pilates.
Right.
And I'd love to see it more integrated into the general like high performance hub of tools that you can provide for your athletes.
Yeah, for sure. All right. So my question following on from that, because I often see two things happening with Pilates educators, either like you did, you come through a university or some form of study, and then you decide to add Pilates onto it, so then you have this broad range of knowledge already, and then you specialize in Pilates. I also see a lot of Pilates educators that don't have a BA or in-depth education. Say after 5-10 years of teaching, they're looking for more. So then they go and do their physiotherapy or the exercise sports science. Do you feel like having that foundation of a BA has given you, a lot of promise in the industry, or has I guess, given you a really deep foundation?
I think it's good to have some foundation before you start, if possible. And whether that's you already have really great body awareness because you've been some sort of athlete or dancer and that sort of thing, or you've done a lot of sports coaching, or you've done more formal study. I think it's hard to start from nothing. I think if you're starting a Pilates certification without a strong movement background or without a strong theoretical background, it's probably not all going to click for you initially. And a lot of the courses are quite rushed now, or intensive courses. And I just don't think you're going to have the time to really put all the knowledge together and get the maximum benefit out of it. But yeah, it probably depends which course you're doing and how long it's going to take you. But I do remember at various times when I was completing the various courses, because initially I did my like comprehensive mat course, and then I did sort of the equipment courses over time. And yeah, there were often many people in the courses that I feel like it just became popular to become a Pilates teacher, and I couldn't understand what drew them to be there. So I think you need to have a good understanding and a good passion for movement before you start. So I'm not sure what's the best order to do it in, but the anatomy knowledge is obviously really important. It's something that you never stop reviewing. It's not, even if you do anatomy at uni, you remember what you're using all the time on a regular basis. So it's always something you're coming back and reviewing and understanding why the exercises are working in the way they do because of where the muscles insert and attach and that sort of thing. So it's tricky. I don't know. I wish it was like part of both worlds. I think they could have a Pilates major in the uni courses as well. Like they have a strength and conditioning major, they should have a Pilates major maybe.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. I feel like now we have a couple of, well, I've had over the years a couple of Brazilian instructors, and in Brazil you can't do your Pilates training unless you have a BA. So they have to do exercise and sports science or exercise physiology to even then get your Pilates diploma, and I didn't do that either. But my background was in 20 odd years of swimming instruction, swimming coaching, cycling coaching, stuff like that. So I understood movement and exercise really well. And I agree, if I didn't have some sort of basis, I still felt like the Pilates certificate was one of the hardest things I'd ever done. So I can't imagine how overwhelming it must be these days. People do just jump into it. So I'm always just interested to know how other people feel about what got you there, but also, how do you think that supported you along the way?
In the reverse order, you also notice it as well. So I notice when I'm teaching exercise science at uni, especially when there's prac exams and that sort of thing, like it's very noticeable straight away which students have done coaching before and which haven't. Because they're just so much more confident in being able to communicate and role play that coach client situation. So even going into an exercise and sports science degree, it's good if you're doing some sort of teaching or some sort of coaching on the side, because you need to be developing those skills along the way. You can't wait till you graduate to start coaching.
Yeah, of course, because you need to be comfortable speaking in front of people and presenting yourself, don't you? It's a big part of it.
Yeah, it's a huge part.
So you did mention before we started, Lauren, that you have started to develop some online content, or who's it for? Do you want to share that with our listeners a little bit?
Yeah, so it's a combination of things. I've been developing some short resources for athletes on different topics: foam roller, core activation, balance, just little tools for the toolkit that athletes can integrate into what they're doing already. But then on the flip side, I've also been developing an online flexibility program that's inspired from gymnastics-based training. And it's a lot of the workouts that have helped me along the way as a gymnast and a performer, but also programs that I've used and taught in classes over many years. So they're things that I strongly believe in. They're really fun programs, but they're great for developing flexibility in a really structured and progressive way. And also there's lots of core strength work in there with a little bit of gymnastics, a little bit of Pilates influence. These ones are probably a little bit more gymnastics inspired, but lots of core, glute, adductor work, balance, movement control, coordination, all put together in sort of fun training sequences. So that's what I've been working on lately.
That's cool. And so who would that be marketed to? Like, is that more marketed to athletes, or is it a resource that if somebody enjoys working with athletes, they could probably draw from as well?
So the online flexibility program, the people who I think will really appreciate that the most is people who have done a little bit of dance or gymnastics when they were younger and love that style of training and now want to use it to keep fit and for cross training. But also people who have done a lot of Pilates and yoga and maybe want to take their flexibility to the next level. I think they would also really enjoy the variety that these workouts bring.
Okay, fantastic. And shall we maybe share is that out yet, or you're working on it at the moment?
Yeah, so it's really still ready. So there's details about that on my Limba by Lauren Instagram page. And I also have the Limba Sports Performance Instagram and website for those high performance athletes who are looking for those really focused resources.
Okay, cool. We'll definitely share your Instagram handles in the show notes as well. And I have a question. What do you hope for the future of Pilates, since it is very much the industry that you've chosen to base the work that you do on? What do you hope for the future of Pilates?
I wish Pilates and strength and conditioning weren't two separate things. I really think they can complement each other. So I don't know how it's a bit tricky, but I'd just like to see more fusion between Pilates and strength and conditioning, because I think they're both really great tools, but I think they're better together. I think Pilates is great for developing your stabilization, your movement control, your muscular endurance. And I think that is the basis from where your maximal strength, your power, your speed work can be showcased. But we need to be coming back to those foundations regularly and touching on them from an injury prevention point of view. So I think they really complement each other well.
And so when you say that, if you're practicing, if you're working with clients and you wanting to do strength and conditioning and Pilates, do you tend to use Pilates weaved in throughout the strength and conditioning, or are you doing Pilates-based movement with heavy load? What does that look like in general?
I don't think Pilates style exercises suit heavy loading, because that's not really the purpose of them. Like I said, it's more that stabilization, endurance, and that sort of thing. I think you can use some Pilates exercises like as a bit of an activation before some of your heavier strength work and as accessory work at the end, depending on the body that you're working with. So often when someone comes to see me, we're working on a very specific injury prevention program. So if it's at the start of that program, it will be kind of more Pilates rehab focused, but with room to progress and be integrated in their more traditional strength and conditioning program as well.
Yeah, I love that message. Hey, that I feel very much similar, that I feel like there has to be some sort of Pilates-based integration into everything that people are doing when it comes to like all the contact sports or the really dynamic sports, anything that demands something happen like this. If we integrate some Pilates into it, then it just brings that mindful movement, like you say, stability in the joints, just bringing everything back together, getting a solid foundation, and then doing the hard stuff, and then bringing it back to that solid foundation.
Yeah, Pilates develops core-driven movement, and that's that's going to benefit your force transfer. That's going to benefit your biomechanics. So it's not just for injury prevention. It's going to improve your performance. If you know how to use your core well, then you're putting less strain on the rest of the body.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I totally agree. Fantastic. Thank you so much, Lauren, for this conversation. I appreciate your time. We'll definitely leave your details in the show notes for people who want to look you up. I love that you are bringing Pilates into the world of professional sports and athletes and people doing wild things with their body. And I love that you did some circus work. That's awesome. Thanks, Lauren, for joining us. My name's Katie Crane. I'm the Pilates professional. See you next time. And that's a wrap, my friend. Now, before you go, make sure you check out the show notes. That's exactly where you'll find anything we're offering alongside this very episode and the link to subscribe to the Pilates News newsletter. Our subscribers receive free handouts and resources connected to the topics we explore right here. They're specifically created for Pilates professionals, movement educators, and Pilates lovers just like you. So, until the next episode,